I'm a speaker, facilitator and coach, and I focus on personal and professional development and fulfillment. I am also a recovering tax advisor, having had a 25-year career in professional services prior to my current focus. But that's all you need to know about me. Here's how the session's going to work today. I'll shortly be asking our panel to introduce themselves briefly and their backgrounds. Then we'll be exploring the 2 case studies that they bring, and then spending about probably 15 minutes on each of those with some reflections from me, and then opening up to your questions for the last 10 minutes-ish at the end of the session. So we have about, well, 58 minutes now together. Please feel free to add your questions at any time during the session, and we'll aim to get to as many as we can at the end. So that will be in the meeting chat. Please use that. Please also just jump into the chat whenever you want to introduce yourself from now, flag your background, your triumphs, your challenges around HSE, and any thoughts and observations that might come up as we go as well. And then in the meantime, I'd be grateful if participants could stay on mute just to keep the sound as good as we can, because we are also recording this session. You'll see that, and that's something that we'll then be able to share with participants afterwards. So if for any reason you fall out of this session or need to pop away, you will be able to watch it back. Great, let's crack on with some introductions. I'd like to start with Nikki. Who are you? Why are you here? What's your background?
Hello everyone, my name is Nikki Curtis. I'm Head of Health and Safety for BIFA in the UK. I come with around 18 years experience in the health and safety world. I love my job, I love the subject. My background is working in construction, highways, facilities management, brewing, and also in the waste industry. My background is also, my degrees in marketing and communication. So communication is at the key and at the heart of everything I do as well. So I'm excited to share the journey that we were on with you today. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Really excited to hear from you. Before we do that, Simon, would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Simon Strong. I'm the Director of Learning at Download Learning. We specialise in long-term memory, so we're bringing a new way of learning to market based on the neuroscience of memory formation. So we sequence information to fire synapses in a distinct time sequence, which enables us to embed it and strengthen and fix neural pathways. We've recently done a big project with the Institute of Physics on GCSE curriculum, where UCL conducted peer-reviewed research and found we delivered the same learning in 1 hour as half a term of classroom learning. So that's what we do. I'm a refugee from the advertising industry at Saatchi & Saatchi Bates 141, where I got to work with Desmond Morris, the zoologist and primatologist. So a lot of my work has a lot of behavioural economics informing it as well. So looking forward to chatting further.
Thanks, Simon. Fascinating. I need to hear more about this. And I'm going to ask Renata to introduce herself. You are fully on brand today, I can see.
Yeah.
Loving your background. Yeah. Renata, tell us about you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm Renata Jushi. I'm a Global HSE Senior Director for DHL Supply Chain. I work very close with the team here regarding to communications. This is that topic that I really love. I work with safety for the last 10 years, for supply chain the last 8 years. Before I have worked for a chemical industry. I didn't born in safety, but this is a topic that since I have started, I really enjoyed. So I use my background with engineering, maintenance, facilities, project management to support me in the role. And I really believe that it makes a lot of differences.
Undoubtedly. Oh, so it's so good to hear 2 people coming into the space who have very different backgrounds, sort of didn't grow up there. Really interesting. And last but not least then, Sally, please do introduce yourself. And also I think you're going to just tell us a little bit also about the upcoming World Safety Day as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, hi, I'm Sally Pritchett. I'm CEO and co-founder of Something Big, and we're a strategic people and culture communications partner, helping organizations create fairer, healthier and happier workplaces. And I guess a real passion of mine is that I've been working in communications for about 30 years, which means I'm pretty old and a veteran of it, if you like. Like Nikki, my original use of communication perhaps was marketing, but I am so passionate about the difference that intentional, well-considered communication can make to driving behavioural change and culture change within organisations. So the latter part of my career has been very focused on around workplace culture and the difference that communication can make to that. In terms of World Safety Day, I mean, to some extent, World Day for Safety and Health at Work, this year it's on the 28th of April. It is just a moment in time, but like all awareness days, it can also be a really great conversation starter, or it can be a chance to refresh or rethink or simply reflect on how you might approach safety. So this in particular, for this awareness day, I was really delighted to set up this conversation, and it started as a cup of coffee with Simon and a discussion over both of our shared passion for safety. And the difference that learning and communication can make to it. And I said, hey, listen, this day is coming up, and I wonder if we were to have some kind of webinar on this, we could share the fantastic work done at BIFA and at DHL with a whole bunch of friends. So I am so delighted that you've all joined and thought this was a good idea. The World Day for Safety and Health, out of interest, is set up by the International Labour Organization. I'll pop a link in the chat in a second. And their theme this year, interestingly, I think, is beyond just physical safety. It's venturing into psychosocial side of working environments as well. So I'll pop a link in the chat. Do go and have a look. They're really thinking about workload and job design and other aspects of safety. So maybe that's not what we're going to talk about so much today, but definitely worth checking them out. I'll pop that in the chat. Back over to you, Ruth, to take us away.
Yeah, and thank you for setting the scene there. It does feel timely, but I'm already picking up on this theme around carrying on dialogue and discussions on an ongoing basis. We'll come back to that. So we're going to start with the case study at BIFA. So Nikki, would you care to set the scene for us around what was happening at BIFA that drove you to try something new and ultimately ended up working with Simon?
Of course. So for those of you who know, BIFA is a waste management company. So we collect domestic waste, industrial waste. We also process it as well. So we do the full end-to-end management for waste management. And when I was working in the resources and energy division, which is the largely the processing part of BIFA, we also have our key risks and how we manage our risks. And we, like any safety professional, you're looking at trends, you're looking at interpreting the data, you're looking at industry. And we were seeing an upwards trend of what I would call high potential near misses involving our mobile plants. So not actually having, thankfully, major injuries, but having the I nearly hit somebody, or a near miss. And so we kind of looked and said, well, what is it that we can do to support our mobile plant community? And what are the areas that we need to look at? So we brought our mobile plant drivers in for a day, and we just said, you tell us, you're the experts, what is it that we can do for improvement? What is it that we can do to support you? So we had a great workshop listening to them, and there was great outputs from that. And that is when one of the facilitators in the session recommended Simon and his team in Download. So we thought, right, okay, we'll take the outputs from what the mobile plant drivers have said as how we can improve. and we'll speak with downloads. So we had a meeting in our head office, and we kind of explained, this is the industry that we work in, this is the facilities that we work in, this is our upwards trends that we would like to support and see that as a downward trend. And we introduced Simon to the world of BIFA, and our aim for success mobile plant training was born. And I think at this point, before I go into too much detail, I kind of hand over to Simon to tell him to tell you what it was like when he kind of walked into the world of waste.
The world of waste is I mean, BIFA is just an incredible company. What they do is just fascinating. But one of the early conversations we had in that first meeting we had was a lot of our experience in regulatory compliance, health and safety. One of the things we talk to clients about a lot is saying that health and safety, regulatory compliance is not separate from the work that you do. It is the work that you do. So we talk about the fact that soldiers are not taught health and safety separately from how they use their weapons. It's core to being competent. And so how do we incorporate competence? How do we wrap it into the day-to-day operations? And I think one of the dangers in health and safety is to look at what you don't want people to do, how to avoid hazards. And the problem with that is that the brain doesn't recognize negatives. And we use the analogy of when I learned to ride a motorbike, doing a U-turn, one of the other riders kept on hitting the curb. And they said, why am I doing this? And the instructor said, where are you looking? And they said, at the curb. He said, that's why you're hitting it. Where do you want to go? Went down the road. Said, look at the road then. And when they did that, they were able to execute the U-turn and ride off into the sunset. And that was the philosophy we had, which is, what is it we want them to hit? And with reversing, which is it's a very unusual maneuver, because anyone who's been in a supermarket, as you're reversing out of a car parking slot, you're not reversing to go somewhere, you're reversing so your front end can go somewhere. And so people don't pay attention as much as they might when they're going forwards. And so aim for success was about, how do we get drivers to give the same intentionality to the reversing maneuver as they do to moving forwards? And how do you hit the empty space? And the AIM became an acronym, which is about anticipation, situation awareness, the intention, and then only then do the wheels move, and building a habit of looking, having an intention, and then making a maneuver. When, as we'll all know from our supermarket, you can put it in reverse and start the wheels turning before you look, which is a bad habit to get into.
Just kind of carry on. What we did was we introduced Simon and the team to the world of waste, and then we took Simon out to our facilities, because what we wanted to do was we wanted to include the workforce in this. We didn't want to create a training package that said you must and you shall do this, and please sign that to tell me that you've done it. So once we understood what we wanted to do, we went out to our sites, and we got some willing volunteers, I'll call them that were very passionate about managing safety and wanting to support the business by reducing the high potential near misses, let's call them. And they did a fantastic piece to camera, unscripted. This is the reason why we think this training program is going to work. This is the reason why we want you to listen. We had directors on camera as well. We had managers on camera, all unscripted. And we wanted this training package to aid the technical training that we already give the drivers, because we give all our drivers technical training. There is reversing aids, there's technology on the equipment. We have at any given time 830 pieces of mobile plant manoeuvring about our business. So we wanted to standardise the training, but make it, I'm loath to say the word behavioural, but it's very, very separate from the technical competence training that we gave out. And the filming went great, and it was a real eye-opener, Simon.
I think one of the extraordinary things we've found is when you put a camera on someone who is good at their job, and it doesn't matter what field they're in, they will almost say exactly the script that you would have written had you scripted it. They were all on the same page. And I think one of the important things from our perspective is that you can't tell someone to care. They have to see themselves, their identity as someone who will do X, and seeing their colleagues identifying in that way that this is the sort of people we are is and that can't be scripted. That authentic connection with each other to say this is who we are, this is the way we conduct ourselves. I think has a huge impact. And I think it goes to what Sally was saying about the psychosocial, how we think about ourselves and how we connect to one another, holding each other to account. I think is a key component to making those behaviours and habits stick, that the culture supports.
And we ended up with a final product after many edits, because we went over every single word. So we took the company's common acronyms, how we speak in our culture, and we used plain English, and we said, let's take that management word out and put this word in. And so we really took a lot of time to edit. And then when we had the final product was a 50 minutes training video backed up with a kind of playbook, and this is how to roll it out and support how you roll it out. And then we did some kind of testing, and we found out, even though we had designed it to happen for a person to go through it individually, we found out that actually doing it in a group was better, because it got what we wanted, which was that discussion points at the end. And then we did a big comms campaign and launch, and we invited Simon and the team to be part of that launch. So it wasn't Biffa launching. And I think we were taken aback about how many questions, Simon, you were getting asked about the science behind time sequence learning. And it was really good. They really did embrace this kind of change in the old training philosophy, which was either face-to-face or e-learning.
I think that it was, I don't think I've ever been grilled in quite such detail and rigor with questions that were really penetrating. But the business as a whole understands this issue, and they are absolutely focused on making a difference. Questions that ranged from the content, is this going to actually impact on safety, through to the science of the delivery. So how does this work for different learner groups? So different the neurodiverse, for those who have foreign language or English as a second language, or even for some drivers a third language, and even one driver who I was quite surprised is deaf. So we had to do a version for a signed version for that operator. So the focus and the rigor that was brought by Biffa to every aspect of it. And I think the language piece, I think, is worth spending a little moment on, which is this idea of cultural literacy, where we often think of language that we can say something and people will understand it. But every domain has domain-specific language, by which I mean at Biffa, there is a language in waste management where words have specific meanings. So I'll give you in physics, for example, a word standard has has a meaning that is specific to the science, which is different from the way we use it colloquial in everyday language. And so as we designed this package, we made sure that the language was colloquial. So we weren't using the acronyms and the specialist language that one might find, because we wanted the audience, whatever level of expertise they might have, whether they've, it was their first week at Biffa or they've been there for 20, 30 years, to be able to understand the concepts and ideas that we were presenting to them. And so that simplicity of language was crucial to comprehension across the business.
Yeah. I think sorry.
So I was just to say, it sounds like that actually there was a real effort to create inclusivity for anyone, however long they've been there, the kind of language they use, the kind of ways they prefer to learn or prefer not to learn, let's say, and to then so that they become more involved in the dialogue and discussion and a kind of community interest rather than seeing themselves as individuals.
Yes, and I think the fact that it was delivered, as Nikki said, that we'd initially designed it with the idea that operators would be able to, because you've got a huge BIFA is nationwide, hundreds of depots, each one with shift work and shift patterns. So to design something that will reach and touch and engage with every employee is quite a challenge, just the logistics of it. So creating a video piece of engagement, normally it's efficient, but normally those sorts of product don't have the impact that we might want them to. Because of time sequence learning, because we can sequence the information to embed it, it has we know that it will deliver the outcomes that we want. But it was designed with the thought that operators might be watching it on their own, which they could do. But as it went out, we discovered that they wanted to do it together. Mm. And that was one of the huge learnings for us, was not just the benefit of it, which was the discussions that took place afterwards, and the connection that supervisors and managers had with their teams, and being able to discuss safety, obviously this, reversing being specific because that was the program, but it went wider than that, and they wanted to talk about it. And I think that was an important component and an important learning part for us, which was that community aspect that, Bob is not operating on his own. He's part of a complex web of relationships and skill sets that make BIFA a company, as opposed to just individuals operating on their own.
Mm. So this was something that was additional to all of the other things that you already had in place, Nikki, around promoting health and safety, but you were trying to do something different, something a bit extra, not to replace it. Because I know we talked when we talked in advance of this, I talked about, it's a bit high risk doing something so different, but actually it was sort of layering it on top. How do you know that it was worth the effort? How do you sort of measure the impact?
And that's probably the most difficult question to answer, because I don't have this magic spreadsheet in the background that I can give you the magic formula. But what I can say is this is how I personally measure it. The chats around the launch and the take up, then immediately the leadership team said, that is such a good product because we took them through it too. Could you do that for our driving community as well? So then Download were immediately commissioned straight after that to create a package for the driving community, because the senior leaders got taken through the quality and what we were proposing. And the only other way I could answer that too is it's a work in progress how we measure success, but this is how I measure success. When I go out and do my walkarounds and my site walkarounds, I spoke to somebody at a depot, and they said, oh, so after watching that video, one of the operatives said, that's a blind spot, could we have some mirrors please? So we just put some mirrors up in that, and now it's not a blind spot any longer. So would those mirrors not being there create an accident or a collision, or I will never be able to tell you, and a spreadsheet would never to tell you. But for me, that's my personal measures of success. It's somebody's taking the time to take this product, take somebody off their work, sit them down, do a session, have that engagement, listened to that person to say, if we just made this improvement here, that would help me, and then went out, bought the mirror, put the mirrors up, and listen to that person. So that is, you said, we did in action. So that's how I measure success, which is not good for the people that want the spreadsheets and an absolute black and white measure of success.
a useful answer, and I know it was a very difficult question that I've just poked at you.
That's fine.
But I knew you'd answer it ably. Thank you for that. I think it would be good to move on and make sure that we also hear from Renata and Sally. I think already I'm starting to see some themes that are going to be amplified and added to as they speak. So, Sally, could you give us a quick overview of the work that you've done with Renata?
Absolutely. And so first of all, for those that don't know, DHL, as you can see from Renata's background, you might well recognize the red and the yellow. But for those that don't know, DHL operates globally in 220 countries and territories around the world. They're one of the most globally connected organizations. And their workforce is a whopping 600,000 employees. So, you know, it's huge business here. And the majority of those employees are doing physically demanding frontline roles, from warehouses to driving, and you name it, they're doing it. There's all sorts of things. Anything you touch, if you look around the rooms that you're in right now, I can tell you that pretty much 99.9% of the stuff that you can see in the rooms that you're in has been through some hands of DHL at some point. So safety for DHL was not new when we started working on this particular project. In fact, DHL has always had safety at their heart. That's always been a priority. And I've worked personally with DHL, and I'm really honoured to have worked with them for 25 years. So in various guises, we have worked on safety so many times. But a few years ago, one particular part of the DHL business was really keen to sort of use World Safety Day as an opportunity to acknowledge and observe the safety and sort of ramp up their communication around safety. And that led to some fairly pertinent questions that we had around, well, okay, what's going well? Where can the improvements be made? If we celebrate just this specific awareness day, how can we carry that forward for the rest of the world, for the rest of the year, sorry? And also, how can we make safety communication work truly in countries all over the world, where languages are different, where challenges are different, etc. And I heard a moment ago, Simon was saying something about cultural literacy and language, and you know, it's worth just blowing your minds for a moment. Not only does DHL operate in 220 countries around the world, but also, you know, there's a warehouse in the UK that has 50 languages that it speaks in one warehouse. So when it comes to cultural agility, cultural literacy, you know, DHL is a massive pressure test for that. So our solution and our answer at the time around this was very much about we kind of asked those important questions, and the solution really for us was a very successful but an always on, all year round communications program under the theme of what we've called Our Safety is in Our Hands. And this campaign is now in its 5th year. It's won multiple awards, from Platinum Creative Awards to Best Frontline Activation, which is a very coveted award for anyone to get. But it's also been shortlisted for Campaign of the Year by the Safety and Health Awards. So it's kind of managed to achieve all of these different things. I'll pop it on screen just to give you a little sense of what we're talking about, and you'll see that it looks really simple, and very purposefully it is very simple. And I, by no means, my team and I cannot take the full credit for all of this. Whilst we have been the comms partner in this, obviously Renata is here to share what her and her team have done all over the world, and the teams on the ground in all of those locations, because what they've done is massively bring this to life. So this is just to give you a little indication of what we're talking about, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview.
Wow, that looks superb. And congratulations. You know, that those aren't small plaudits for what you've done here. And like you say, I could see that getting to something like this, that it's this simple, actually, you know, takes a lot. So perhaps Renato, you could share from your point of view, how do you get through all the challenges to get to this simplicity?
This is a great question, and I will take a word that Simon said, that is simplicity. And then you see that we connect the dots when we talk about communications. The first challenge we had was to remove the complexity. As Sally mentioned, we operate across the world. So we need to be simple. We need to deliver the message without big messages behind. You know, it needs to be simple. People need to observe the material and automatically understand what we want to say with that. So this is the first point at all. So if we take in consideration the locations we are, if we take in consideration the diversity we have, where we are located, the diversity, the inclusion. So we need to take all of this in consideration. And as safety professionals, and I'll say by myself, talking to myself, we have the tendency to go in details, to have everything controlled. I want to deliver exactly this message, and we need to step back a little bit and say, I need to communicate to all, and how we will make it to happen. So this was the first challenge we had. The second one was about to keep the message constant to everybody. Of course, we every single year we have the World Safety Day and week that we celebrate the full week. But we said, is this enough to create a culture, to deliver the right message? This is not enough. So what we made was to intentionally uh, split the message in small messages, in small periods, where we embedded the operation into the campaign. So the messages are simple. They will see posters. Leaders are engaged with one topic, and the topic was normally decided based on the risks. So we always take this in consideration, that we want to elevate the safety culture and the safety of our employees. But we split everything that we would like to address. Instead of going once, we say, okay, let's keep the message constant. Let people embrace what we want to say to them. And thirdly, that I think maybe it's the most important one, is about accountability. When we talk about safety, even I'm the global senior director, I'm in charge of that. Uh, it's not my responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility to ensure safety. If we have the mindset that just one is responsible, we put all the efforts and all the attention on that person. And no, we have in supply chain, we are talking about 170,000 employees working. So we don't have eyes to look to safety professionals to look to everybody all the time. So we need to bring the accountability. And the name of the campaign, Our Safety is in Our Hands, says this. So it's in my hands, in your hand. So if you do something wrong, I have the authority to go there and say to you, it's wrong. It's putting you at risk. It's putting myself at risk. So even since the beginning of the campaign, to choose the right words and the right approach was fundamental. And we see this daily in our operations is simply amazing. So it's all responsibility, managers, frontliners. So everybody have this message very clear nowadays. So it's very important to keep this strong message to everybody.
So really simple, straightforward for everyone, can be understood globally. And you mentioned there actually all the way to frontline staff. And Sally, before you talked about the award for best frontline activation, and actually that my mind went to this with Nikki as well. This sort of challenge of how do you reach those people and also make sure that you're not taking their time away from what they should be doing day to day in order to be able to instill and embed these messages.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I care passionately and deeply, and I'm slightly obsessed with frontline because, of course, it's our frontline that are doing the work. So it's absolutely gutting to see any communication miss that critical frontline community. But, when it comes to safety, that is not an option because that's who we're trying to get to. And having spent so long working in communication, I think there is a tendency to concentrate when we talk about hard to reach employees or frontliners. There's a tendency to try and find channels or methods to get to those people. And absolutely, we need to do that. And DHL has done a fantastic job with their employee app, because it's one thing to have the channel, it's another thing to get everybody onto it and engaging in it. And they do phenomenally hard work to do that. But I'm going to encourage everyone else to think about a few other things as well, because it isn't just about the channels. I think, firstly, I'm going to say to consider your activation very carefully. I think, we'll all understand that frontliners are busy. They're really busy doing the job. Maybe Simon mentioned this is the job, right? And sometimes communication can be seen as an extra thing to do at the end of the day, and they don't have time for that. So, and this is where the simplicity comes again. They have literally seconds to look at what it is that we're putting in front of them. They don't stop and come to our communication. We have to take communication to them. So we used the working environment as our canvas, if you like, and we put the messaging for safety on banners, on posters, etc., around the facility, and it's clearly visible. And a lot of people are going to go, yeah, well, that's obviously how we used to do it all in the 80s, and that's not a new thing. And that's true. But I can tell you what has happened in my career when I've looked at how we invest in communication is that often we go, oh, yeah, but we do things digitally now. We've got an app. Well, funny enough, actually, if you want something to be front of mind and you need it to be really prevalent in your operation, that investment you make into these massive banners that we have hanging in a huge warehouse. They're not little tiny banners. That investment is huge, but that investment in itself is its own message, because it's the investment in that says, this is a topic we care about, this is important. So I think it's been very easy over the last few decades to pull back on some of that money and that investment, and I'm going to implore you not to, if it's important to you. The second thing, so I would be basically advising people, think about your activation of this, think about where you're going to invest your effort. The second thing that I'm obsessed with is giving our middle managers and our supervisors the capability, the support, the confidence that they need. Now, in this particular topic, we're talking about giving them the confidence to lead on safety. I often refer to this layer as the sort of squeezed middle. They are incredibly busy. They've got all the chatter that's coming from their teams, but they've got all the chatter that's coming down from head office and sort of support teams, etc. So they're really squeezed. But credit to DHL, they invested in that layer too. So as well as those posters and banners for the front line, we also underpin that with pocket guides and videos and quick reference guides and all the sorts of things that the managers and supervisors needed, so that they had an opportunity to lead safety confidently. And I think that is critical. So don't forget that layer, is what I would say. The third thing I'd say about frontline activation, and this might be hard for some of us to think about sometimes, but it is okay to be happy at work. And actually, frontliners often really enjoy their job. And I heard Nikki a minute ago say that she took Simon out into the operation. And you know, if anyone on this call, by the way, has a facility and they're happy to let me come and have a look for a day, I love it. I love going to see a facility. But you know what you'll see when you go and see frontliners is you'll see people having banter and chats and good teamwork. Because when you're on frontline, actually it's a great job. It's physically demanding and it's hard, you know, it's pressurized, but you also see teams working really well together, not just all talking to screens like we might in a desk job. So I think the other thing that a DHL do really, really well is they take the time to make things fun. In fact, I think we can see on Renata's background, she's got Copy with Pride here, which is one of the concepts for this year. And Copy with Pride is about when you see great behavior, copy it, because that's what we want. And what a great competition that went out with this was make videos. And you'd be surprised how many frontline teams and local teams will put forward their videos and their competitions to win prizes or whatever, but they have fun and they come up with dances and they do crazy things, which are really great, and they enjoy it and they really wholeheartedly lean into the topic. So make it fun, and that's fine. And I'm going to sort of land on one last thing. And again, I really implore everyone to listen to this and then maybe go back and look at their comms and really think about this. But frontline comms, there is a really fine balance between, and it's a nuance between simplification and dumbing down. And what happens sometimes when people try to simplify, in fact, what they do is they dumb down and they patronize. And so I'm going to say, really watch your tone, because my impression of frontline jobs is that they're incredibly hard to deliver. They take huge expertise. Most of us on this call could not do them day to day. And it is really incredibly important that our communication is delivered with real respect, because when we get that tone wrong and we patronize, it comes across as something that they're being told. It's a head office thing, and if we're not careful, it kind of just they don't engage in it. I see a lot of internal comms sometimes that I think, oof, has that got a bit of an edge to it? Does that make me a bit cringe? So make it fun. I know I'm being a bit painful here. Make it fun, but don't dumb it down to the point that it's silly and childish, because that's a fine balance, and you could disengage your frontline instead of engage them. So those are some of my tips, I would say.
Really helpful advice, Sally. Thank you for that. And Renata's nodding along, in full agreement. Lots of nodding from all of us. You make it sound like it was a very smooth project, and you know, you knew what you were doing throughout. Renata, one last question for you before I kind of do a bit of a summary and move to questions. If you've got somebody who's about to embark on the journey and doesn't have all of the hindsight that you now have, what might they find that surprised them? What surprised you on your journey? There must have been something, right, that came from over here. Okay.
For sure. Even we talk about a campaign that is simple. The fact that it's simple doesn't mean that it's easy. So in the journey, we face to some unexpected moments and situations that we had to dealt with. Imagine that talking again, we have a diversity. We are in several countries. So what sometimes represent something that is really very nice from one location, for example, Latam, where I'm based, not necessarily for UK and I will be that funny. So we need to balance, we need to listen to our audience, we need to respect, because this is based on culture, So sometimes we have to step back. Okay, for me, it will not represent something that is really nice, but for them, yes. So we need to balance that, listen, be attentive to that, to create a campaign that will make sense, but fundamentally, really believe on our supervision, our coordination, because at the end, they will apply the campaign. So we have to give them freedom to apply the best way for their culture, not for my culture, not for the way I think is the right one. So the main work from us was to define the right message, to define how to deliver and what to deliver to them. So here are the package for you. Now use your creativity to make it happen in a safe way. And it works very, very well, mainly when we have like events like the World Safety Day, when we receive a lot of videos, a lot of material from the operations, we see clearly the difference between one and another. And there's no one best than other, better than other. What happens is it works for them. And at the end, we have our purpose that is achieved. So this is simply amazing. And as curiosity, as we are talking about challenge, we had a situation, for example, you saw it, and you can see here that we work with hands, but not necessarily, we work with symbols with the hands, but sometimes what the symbol with the hands will represent something that is not necessarily nice. So we had some fresh eyes internally that said, Renata, here it's work, but here no way. So let's review this and take this out. So it's also important to have the mind open, to adapt when required. And the other thing that I think is important to mention is about the purpose. Understand the moment you have in your organization. If people still talk safety is PPE and do not understand why to wear PPE, what is the purpose behind? So set the right scene, set the foundation, let people know why they are doing that. And once they observe this information, everything that you deliver after, it's very easy for them because it makes sense. So this is my main tip for all of you. Really understand the moment of the organization. There's no problem to step back and set the right foundation because it's priceless. When you see the full organization completely engaged, talking about safety, not in one level, but in all levels, and not because we are asking, it's just because they see value on that, you really see the value of a great campaign. So that's my main tip for all of you.
Thank you. Fantastic tips. And well, all of you, Nikki, Simon, Renata, Sally, what fantastic case studies these are, and so much insight coming out from them. And I know we've only really been able to scratch the surface. Everybody, you've sort of got a 1 to 2 minute warning if you want to start thinking of your questions while I do a quick summary. I don't see any in the chat yet, but that doesn't mean you can't put your hands up in a moment. But if I guess if I was just to reflect on some overriding words that come up for me through while I've been listening to this, I think they would be agency, empowerment, simplicity, and embeddedness. They're not probably the only things, but let me explain why they've come up for me and what kind of triggered those. And so agency, well, there's an assumption of the agency in the individuals, those on the front line, that they can understand, make their choices and do things, but also giving them agency to be able to get involved, to surface why incidents happen and what to do about it, and then to be able to, in thinking about Renata's example, of interpret it for your own culture. So there really is a giving and accepting that individuals have agency in order to be able to do this. And using another word that Sally mentioned, let's not patronize people. These people know what they're doing. They know the job better than anyone else because they're doing it. Secondly, empowerment. I think that's linked to it. Empowerment to apply a local lens. Treating drivers as heroes. This was actually a term I don't think that Nikki and Simon said, but I had heard them say it when we spoke beforehand. They're the hero of the story. Terms like elite professional drivers, specialists in reversing, and then empowering them to share observations and be a participant in a community of practice. Simplicity. I couldn't go away without managing to notice that word come up a few times. Non-technical language, visuals that transcend language, being a little bit cautious about some of those symbols as well. And then embeddedness, repetition, embedding behaviors so that they come to be how we do things around here. And I guess that therefore means that, for me, these all sound like the great ingredients of a healthy culture. Agency rather than authoritarianism, guiding principles on the ways of being and behaving that are embodied and embedded rather than separate boxes to be ticked, and the empowerment of individuals to contribute. I guess another quick reflection, I think both Nikki and Renata, they're great role models. They've brought other perspectives from outside HSE into this space. And they're both continually asking, what else can we be doing? Are we doing enough? Is this enough? That is a quote from Renata from earlier. What else could we be doing? Nikki said the same thing. How can we maintain awareness, embed it into our way of thinking? So those were my themes that I took from this as an amateur in this space, let's say. We've got a question.
Yay.
From Liz.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great question. How do you avoid complacency kicking in and old habits trickling back in? Banners and assets after a while become invisible. Who would like to take this one?
I'm happy to, but I think Simon's also got his mouth open.
Simon's nodding. Sally,
I'm pretty sure everyone will have a go at it.
Well, Simon, have a go first, and we'll have the others add to it.
Well, I think there are. I mean, firstly, I think we've spoke prior to this call about the fact that habit is always more powerful than motivation. So motivation, we know, waxes and wanes, and when it wanes, that's when habits kick in. So getting people into a habit of doing whatever it is that we want them to do is much more powerful than trying to get them motivated to do the right thing. And that's about getting them to do that every time, so it becomes a part of the operating system. This is why I say it's not separate from the work or in addition to the work. Health and safety is the work itself. It's the way that we conduct ourselves. And I think that's a really good point about the complacency, which is if they don't feel that this is a community and that this is the way we do things around here, this is our culture, that's when they think, I can't be bothered. And I think that's about and I'm just to give some research on this around agency. There's a wonderful piece of research I came across recently where volunteers were asked to read a piece of text, one which said you didn't have free will, and the other which said you did. And the researchers then accidentally revealed how to cheat a test. Those that had been told that they didn't have free will were significantly more likely to cheat than those who believed that there was free will. And I think when we think about health and safety, about doing the right thing, about not cheating, about taking the hard route rather than the easy option, we need to think about agency, about giving the agency, the autonomy to the individual to make the right decisions and trusting them to do that. So I'm going to shut up now because I know Sally and Renata and Nikki have got things to say as well.
Go on, who's next? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask Renata, particularly about how you sort of keep it going, keep it fresh.
Yeah, this is a great point and a great question. And when we think about the visual communication, is it what you are saying is completely correct? If we just display the posters and we keep it there, it will stay there and it will be invisible and nobody will talk about this anymore. The point is, these need to be more than a simple and visual communication. And this is the work we do in the background to ensure that safety is in every single mouth of the organization, that we talk about safety all the day. So the messages and the visuals are just to reinforce the message. If we just display something and let it there, it's like 2 days, 3 days, it has no effect at all. So we need to guarantee that we have the proper communication in all levels, mainly with the high leadership, with the executives of the company. Because if they do something, people will replicate, and the message that we'll see in the banners or the visual will just reinforce the message. Say, this is true, this is our value. So this is the reason that we have the visuals, but we have the full work around communication, the internal communication, to ensure that we are delivering the proper message and the people live what we are saying, not just observing.
Okay, so there's an embedding part, there's an empowerment agency part that Simon's talked about, and I'm guessing there's a consistency part, keeping it in people's minds as well. You've got to keep working on this. Sally, talk about your bonfires and
my fireworks.
Fireworks. Go on.
Well, I can do. I can do. I was going to first start with, look, what we're hearing from Nikki and Renata today, and also from, I know their organizations in BIFA and DHL, is that complacency is not happening in those organizations. It's not happening in Nikki and Renata because they're constantly looking for change. And something we haven't had a chance to tackle today is that health and safety is not staying the same. The challenges are changing, you know, whether it's autonomous vehicles or difficult chemicals or, you know, people in and around bins, etc. The challenges are changing. So health and safety is not staying the same. So I guess my thing would be avoid the one and done thought. You know, otherwise, you know, Renata and Nikki would have gone, oh, I've done that 5 years ago, so now I'll just leave that be. And that's the complacency that they don't have in their organizations. So funny enough, they don't have it at Frontline. But yes, my fireworks and bonfires, which a lot of people get very bored of hearing me talk about, but communication for me, if you think about firework night, we can spend a lot of money in a whole set of fireworks and it stops us in our tracks and we all look up in the sky and go, ooh, ah. And that budget can go poof, literally like that. And we can spend a lot of money. But what we do is we get people's attention. So sometimes World Safety Day is a great opportunity for a few fireworks to get everybody to stop and pay attention for a minute. But we also need the bonfire. The bonfire is the thing that keeps people for the rest of that evening. And this is a very UK analogy, apologies, bonfire night. But it keeps people building community, having conversations. It's a magnet and an attraction to staying together and having a community. And Simon, you said earlier on, you found that people wanted to do this together. And that's the bonfire. That's the conversations that we really, really need. So yeah, that's my analogy. And by the way, I often say budget often does come with the fireworks, but hold back your budget for your bonfire. Bonfire takes more effort and investment in human investment rather than always needing all the budget. I think we're running out of time.
We are. Well, I'm going to ask Nikki to have the final word for 20 to 30 seconds, just because you're always thinking about this and always on it. And if you can, what are you doing next?
Well, what are we doing next? In terms of
not straight after this. Maybe you're going to have a cuppa.
I'm annoying Simon even more than I usually do. So we have such a good working partnership that we're working on our People in Around Bins project so that we can support our drivers and our clients and our customers with the challenge that we find in the UK at the moment. So we've done mobile plant drivers, made them heroes. We've done our drivers, made them heroes, and so we're wanting to support again the front line in the situations that we find ourselves in. So Simon and I are working on a fabulous People in Around Bins project. So that's what we're doing next.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's a great way to end. Onwards and upwards, everybody. Thank you to those who've joined today. Thanks for the questions. Thank you, Arta, Nikki, Sally and Simon for all your insights today. And connect with us if you would like to, if you haven't already. Here are links to our LinkedIn.